Hey guys, when we are listening to someone talking in a second language, it's so easy to really be focusing just on, the words they're saying and their body language and their expressions and things like that. But I'm going to ask you to take a step back just for a moment, and the next time you're listening to someone, like especially like if you're shadowing, if you're trying to practice with a show or a podcast or some sort of audio, maybe even this class today, what I want you to pay attention to is just kind of the rhythm of the sound. We talked about this recently in a stream where I was talking about just pay attention to the music. There was a study that recently went out that you can find in that previous stream that was discussing how there's lots of different patterns. Like if you're doing like the da 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 da, that has a certain emotional weight. It conveys some sort of emotion to your listener versus like da da versus like da da. Like all of these little sounds, not even having any words attached to them, automatically convey emotion. And so if we can tap into that immediately, that can help us to, in our own speech, try to replicate those same patterns and then convey those same emotions. Because the reality is that the words that you're using are less important than tone of voice, body language, expressions, things like that. The words are only worth like 20%. Everything else is way, way more valuable to your listener. Good morning, guys. Good evening. Good afternoon. We got Dan, Emmanuel, and David hanging out with us. Good to see you all. Welcome to your daily American English pronunciation show, which is Wake Up American. We're here Monday through Friday, typically around the hours 7 to 8 a.m. New York, to make sure you can get in your 5 to 10 minutes of pronunciation practice for today. And to guide you in that process, there is me. Hello, my name is Jeff. It rhymes with breath. It's one of the 4 keys to a natural sound in American English: placement, pitch, breath. Trying to weaken your consonant sounds in order to strengthen your vowel sounds. I'm going to play for you a section of audio just to kind of demonstrate some different patterns for you. These are patterns I was using last night in our group coaching. By the way, if you're a channel member, you can watch that previous stream, and that may be helpful for you because we go into more detail on it. Give me a moment. Look at that. And then I'll cycle back here. So let me grab my headphones and let's just kind of find some sample patterns so that way you guys know kind of what to look for when you're doing this sort of work on your own. All right, give me 1 second and we will try to find something for us. Let's see our first pattern to use as an example. Take a listen to this.
Throughout your high school life, you were probably yourself. I think, throughout your high school life,
Do you see the pattern of sounds here and pitches?
throughout your high school life, throughout your high school life, throughout your high school life.
Okay, so don't worry so much about the words. Just kind of pay attention to what's happening, especially like pitch-wise and movements.
Throughout your high school life.
So it's like da 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 da.
Throughout your high school life.
And once you feel like you have kind of the pattern down,
Throughout your high school life.
then you can start attaching words back in. Okay, it's like da 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 da. Throughout your high school life, throughout your high school life, da 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 da. Throughout your high school life.
Throughout your high school life.
Okay, so that's the example of kind of what we're talking about here. Let's find it another one. Let's see if you can find what the pattern is.
School or sports or whenever. School or sports or whenever. It's grades or school or sports or whenever. School or sports or whenever.
Okay, one of the things you can tell here, this is a pattern that you'll see with lists sometimes. Okay, it's like pay attention to what's happening here.
School or sports or whenever.
Da 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 da.
School or sports or whenever.
School or sports or whatever. Do you see that? Let's find another pattern.
But the one I remember the most. But the one I remember the most.
See if you can get the pattern here before I say it. I'll play it 2 more times.
But the one I remember the most. But the one I remember the most. But the one I remember the most.
Okay, so again, don't worry so much about the words, just what's the pattern here.
But the one I remember the most.
But the one I remember the most.
But the one I remember the most.
Do you see the pattern?
But the one I remember the most. But the one I remember the most. But the one I remember the most.
But the one I remember the most. Okay. Let's do maybe one more test before I have to run to a class. Hello to Mateos being here with us. Good to see you. Thanks for hanging with us this morning.
Yeah.
Um, so I thought I can just walk on in college and play baseball. I thought I can just walk on in college and play baseball. I thought I can just walk on. I thought I can just walk on in college and play baseball.
You see the pattern here. What's the pattern? Don't listen about the words. Focus on the pattern.
I thought I can just walk on in college and play baseball.
So, okay, it starts high and just kind of descends and then it ascends, right? It's like da 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 da.
I thought I can just walk on in college and play baseball.
Da 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 da.
I
I
thought
thought
I
I
can
could
just
just walk
walk
on
on in
in college
college
and
and play
play
baseball.
baseball.
I
Da
thought I can
da
just
da
walk on in
da
college
da
and
da
play
da da.
baseball. I
Da
thought I can
da
just walk on
da
in college
da
and
da
play
da da.
baseball.
Da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. I thought I could just walk on in college and play baseball. Okay. Do you see these sorts of patterns? This is what I'm talking about. If we can just identify what is kind of just the music that's happening in the background, what's that general movement? Because those movements, once we can get used to listening for them, we can start understanding there are patterns to this that need to go in different situations, depending on like if you're angry, if you're curious, if you're upset, if you're frustrated, if you're bored. These all determine or help determine the pattern that you need to use when you're talking. So play around with that. Again, I would say that if you are interested in more about these sorts of pitch patterns and things like that, I do have 2 video courses. I also there's 2 of them. One's called Pitch Apprenticeship, which looks at 9 of the most common patterns native speakers use, just like this. And then the other one is Pro Pitch Mastery, which looks at how do entertainers use these pitch patterns. These video courses are also available for channel members who are at the highest level. So it's like the scholar level. So you can watch them too for people here on YouTube. Anyways, I do have to run to my class, guys. But hey, thank you so much for hanging out with me. I know there's a lot of pronunciation resources out there. I'm very much aware of that. So the fact that you are here for a little bit of your day is greatly appreciated. I will see you all later. I hope you have a good day, have a good night, and a good afternoon, guys. See you all.